The diner went quiet. Forks froze mid-air. Even the jukebox seemed to stop humming. All eyes turned toward the sound. A sharp, ugly smack, a young boy, maybe 12, stood still. One cheek red, eyes wide, shocked. He didn't cry. Didn't even blink. He just whispered, "Why'd you do that?" The man who hit him, tall, red-faced, probably late 40s, growled, "Because kids like you don't belong here." "This place is for paying folks," the boy whispered again. "But my dad owns this place," the man scoffed. "Sure he does, kid. Go tell your imaginary daddy." People watched. Some looked down at their plates. Others stared, frozen between fear and guilt. One woman muttered, "He's just a child," but no one stood up. No one. Yet. The boy's name was Jamal Carter. 12 years old. Black, smart, gentle. He'd come in after school, like he always did, to grab a slice of pie before his dad finished work. But today was different. And what happened next would change that diner forever. Beat pause. If you're watching this right now, tell me where you're from in the comments. And hit like if you've ever seen something unfair but couldn't speak up. Because what you're about to hear isn't just about one boy getting slapped. It's about what happens when silence becomes part of the problem. Let's rewind before the slap. Before the whispers. Before the diner became a battlefield of pride and prejudice. Jamal's father, Robert Carter, was a man everyone in town knew. Worked 3 jobs before buying Carter's Diner, the only place open 24 hours in Montgomery, Alabama. He built it from nothing. Brick by brick, dream by dream. And for Jamal, that diner was like a second home. He'd do homework in the corner booth, sneak fries when his dad wasn't looking, serve customers sometimes, just to help. But not everyone liked seeing a black man own something in a town that still whispered old ideas behind closed doors. The man who slapped Jamal, his name was Chuck Benson, a regular, came in almost every morning, sat at the same counter seat, ordered the same thing, black coffee, 2 eggs, and a bad attitude. Chuck didn't like changes. Didn't like how Robert hired new staff. Didn't like how the diner started getting busier. And most of all, didn't like seeing a confident young black boy walking like he belonged. That morning, Chuck had been drinking early. He stumbled in just before noon. Muttered something about kids these days under his breath. And when Jamal accidentally brushed his sleeve while serving pie, Chuck snapped. The slap wasn't just about a pie. It was about hate that had been simmering for years, finally boiling over. But Chuck made one mistake. He thought no one would do anything. He thought Robert wasn't there. He was wrong, because behind that swinging kitchen door, Robert Carter had seen everything, and what he did next would make the entire town remember his name. Robert just stepped out from the kitchen, eyes locked on the man who hit his son. The kitchen door swung open, hard, loud enough to silence every whisper left in the diner. Robert Carter stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, his apron still on, hands dusted with flour. But his face, it wasn't angry. It was cold. The kind of cold that comes when anger's already burned through and left something sharper behind. He didn't shout, didn't run, just walked, slow, steady, toward his son. "Jamal," he said quietly, kneeling down. "You okay, son?" Jamal nodded, his lips trembling but his eyes steady. He looked up at his father like he wanted to be strong, like crying would let him down. Then Robert stood, turned to the man still standing at the counter. "You laid hands on my boy," he said. Calm, controlled. But his voice carried across the whole room. Chuck Benson tried to smirk, but his face twitched. "Your boy? Don't tell me," Robert cut him off. "That's right, my boy. And this," he gestured around the diner, "is my place." Gasps, murmurs. Someone dropped a fork. Chuck's smirk vanished. This dump's yours?" Robert took one step closer. "This home," he said, "feeds this whole town. The same town that fed my father scraps." Chuck looked around, waiting for someone to back him up. No one did. The waitress, Maria, looked away. Old Mr. Jenkins at the window stopped chewing. Even the coffee machine stopped gurgling like it didn't dare interrupt. "Sir," Maria whispered, "maybe we should call—" Robert raised his hand gently. "No, Maria, we won't call anyone. Not yet. He looked straight at Chuck. Because some men don't need police to learn a lesson. They need truth. Chuck took a step back. You threatening me, Carter? Robert didn't blink. No, I'm reminding you where you are. He leaned in, voice low but steady. You just slapped the boss's son in front of the whole town. Now tell me, what do you think happens next? Chuck's jaw tightened. He glanced toward the door. Everyone was still watching, and Jamal, still standing behind the counter, said something barely above a whisper. Dad? Please don't fight him. Robert looked back at his son. His face softened. I won't, son, but I will make him understand. He turned back to Chuck. You've been coming here for years, eating my food, sitting at my counter. You knew who I was, didn't you? Chuck swallowed. Didn't matter to me who you were. That's the problem, Robert said quietly. It should have. He took off his apron and folded it slowly, laying it on the counter like a symbol. Leave, he said finally, before you lose more than your temper. Chuck stared at him for a long moment, then laughed. A short, cruel sound. You think I'm scared of you? But before Robert could speak again, the diner door opened, and in walked Officer Green, the town's deputy. Chuck's friend, everything okay here? Green asked, his eyes moving from Robert to Jamal to the tension that still hung in the air. Robert said calmly, You tell me, officer. Chuck grinned again. This man's threatening me, Green. The deputy's hand rested on his belt. Mr. Carter, he said slowly, I think we should step outside. Robert sighed. Jamal's hand gripped the edge of the counter. He knew what that tone meant, because in this town, fairness depended on who you were, and right now, the scales weren't in their favor. As Officer Green motioned for Robert to step outside, Jamal whispered to himself, Please, not again! The bell above the diner door jingled once, then silence. Robert stepped out first, his hands calm, eyes firm. Officer Green followed, one hand near his holster like muscle memory. Chuck Benson trailed behind, wearing that same smirk, the kind that thought the law would always be on his side. Inside, Jamal pressed his face against the window. His heart hammered. He'd seen this kind of scene before, not with his dad, but with others. And it never ended fair. Outside, the afternoon sun hit hard, bouncing off chrome cars and old brick walls. The diner's sign creaked in the wind. Green crossed his arms. Robert, I don't want trouble. You know that, Robert nodded. Neither do I, officer. But that man put his hands on my son. Green's jaw tightened. Look, Chuck says the kid mouthed off. Maybe it was just... Robert cut in, voice sharper than steel. He's 12. He said nothing wrong. Chuck barked out a laugh. Oh, come on. The brat bumped into me. I barely what? Robert stepped forward. Barely hit him? Barely humiliated a child in front of a room full of people too scared to speak? Green raised his hand. All right, that's enough. Robert didn't stop. No, officer. It's not enough. Because you know what the worst part is? This ain't the first time something like this has happened here. The words hung in the air like smoke. Jamal watched through the glass, his small hands gripping the window frame. Maria stood behind him, whispering, Your dad's brave, baby. Real brave. Robert took a deep breath. You protect him, don't you? Every time he mouths off, every time he crosses the line. Green's eyes flicked toward Chuck, just for a second, and that was all Robert needed to see. Thought so, Robert said quietly. Friendship runs deep in this town, Green sighed. Robert, I'm trying to keep this from getting ugly. It got ugly the moment that man hit my son. Chuck sneered. You people always play the victim. Maybe you shouldn't... Before he could finish, Robert stepped forward, close enough for Chuck to see the fury in his eyes. I've spent my whole life proving I'm more than what small minds like yours see. I've worked twice as hard for half as much. And still, men like you think you can lay hands on my child and walk away. Green moved between them. Robert, that's enough. Robert stared at him, then exhaled. He looked back toward the diner window. Jamal's face was still there, pressed to the glass, eyes full of fear, and that sight, it softened something inside him. Robert lowered his voice. You want to protect him, officer? Fine. But remember, the whole town saw what he did, and I won't stay quiet. Green's shoulders tensed. You making this official? Robert nodded. Oh, it's official. Chuck rolled his eyes. Good luck with that, boss man. Robert turned to walk back inside. But then Green said something that made him stop cold. Robert, he said quietly, you might want to drop this. Folks here, they don't take kindly to stirring trouble, especially from he didn't finish. He didn't have to. Robert turned his head slowly, staring him down. From what, officer? Green looked away. The message was clear. Robert went back inside the diner without another word. And as the bell chimed behind him, Jamal ran into his arms, whispering, Dad, they can't do this again. Please. Robert knelt, holding him close. I promise, son, he said softly. This time, we won't stay quiet. But outside, through the diner window, Chuck and Green were still talking. And from the look on Chuck's face, he wasn't done either. That night, when Robert locked up the diner, he didn't notice the man sitting in his truck across the street. Watching, waiting, engine running. The neon Carter's Diner sign flickered against the dark Alabama sky. Most nights, the soft hum of the lights meant peace, a place where coffee cups clinked, laughter rolled, and the smell of fresh pie filled the air. But not tonight. Tonight, that hum sounded different, like something was about to break. Robert Carter turned the diner's key, the final click echoing across the empty lot. He glanced once through the glass door, at the booths, the counters, the place he'd built with every dollar and dream he had. Then he turned to leave. A pickup truck sat across the street. Engine off. Headlights dimmed. Robert's gut tightened. He knew that truck. Chuck Benson's old Ford. Robert sighed, gripping his keys a little tighter. He didn't want another scene. Not tonight. He started walking toward his car, but halfway there, a door creaked open. Chuck's voice drifted out. You think you embarrassed me today, huh? Robert froze. Go home, Chuck, he said firmly. You've done enough. Chuck stepped out unsteady, a half-empty beer bottle in his hand. The air smelled like cheap whiskey and trouble. I ain't done till people like you stop acting like you run things, Chuck spat. He took another step forward, glass crunching under his boots. Robert didn't move. His voice stayed even. You're drunk. You need to walk away. Chuck laughed, but it wasn't a funny sound. You think anyone's gonna back you up? That cop's my buddy. The whole town's on my side. You're just the guy who got lucky. Robert took one step closer. I didn't get lucky, Chuck. I worked. That's the difference. Chuck's smile vanished. He smashed the beer bottle against his truck's door, glass shattering. You think you're better than me? He growled. You and that little boy of yours. Robert's hand shot up. Don't you say it. Chuck paused, then grinned. Oh, hit a nerve, did I? The sound of tires squealed behind them. A car pulled up fast, headlights slicing through the dark. It was Maria, the waitress, her window rolled down. Mr. Carter, get in, please, she shouted. He's not right. He's been drinking all day. Chuck turned toward her, yelling, Mind your business, Maria. But that split second was all Robert needed. He turned, walked to his car, and got in. Didn't say a word. Didn't give Chuck the satisfaction. Chuck yelled after him, This ain't over, Carter, you'll see. Robert didn't look back. He just drove off, slow, steady, until the diner lights faded behind him. Inside the truck, Chuck sat fuming, breathing heavy. Anger and humiliation twisted in his chest like a storm he couldn't calm. He picked up his phone. Called someone? Yeah, he muttered, voice slurred. We're gonna make sure that diner don't open tomorrow. Click. The call ended. The truck engine roared to life, and in the quiet Alabama night, a plan for revenge had just begun. At 2:47 a.m., smoke began to rise from behind Carter's diner, and Jamal woke up coughing, smelling something burning through his window. The first thing Jamal smelled was smoke. Thick, bitter, wrong. He sat up fast, rubbing his eyes. Outside his bedroom window, the sky flickered orange. Dad! he shouted, voice cracking. "Dad, wake up!" Robert was already out of bed, shirt half-buttoned, rushing down the hallway. He didn't need to ask. He could see it through the blinds. The diner. His diner, flames licking at the sidewall, growing fast. The soft glow that once meant open late now looked like hell's own light. Call 911. He barked. Jamal was already dialing, hands trembling. Robert grabbed his keys and ran out barefoot. No time for shoes, no time for thought. By the time he reached the diner, the windows were fogged black with smoke. The neon sign sparked, fizzed, and died. His heart felt like it was burning, too. He yanked open the back door. Heat slammed him in the face. He could hear the crackle, the groan of wood giving way. He tried to get inside, but a wall of fire roared back, forcing him out. "Dad!" Jamal screamed from the street, phone still pressed to his ear. "The fire truck's coming!" But Robert wasn't listening. He stared into the flames, eyes wide, disbelieving. Every photo, every recipe, every piece of his life, gone. Maria's voice came from behind. "Oh my God," she whispered. She'd driven over barefoot, too, still in her nightclothes. Robert turned to her, voice hoarse. "Was anyone inside?" "No. I don't think so," she said, covering her mouth. "I saw it when I was locking up my shift report at home. Called it in, but—" Her voice cracked. They both knew it was too late. The sirens grew louder, red and blue lights painting the smoke like a nightmare kaleidoscope. Jamal ran to his father, clinging to his waist. "It's okay, Dad, we can fix it." "We can—" Robert couldn't speak. He just held his son, jaw tight, eyes wet. As the firefighters battled the blaze, one of them shouted, "Looks like it started near the back wall, by the dumpster. Maybe arson." Robert looked up. "Arson?" The firefighter nodded grimly. "We'll need to investigate." But yeah, this wasn't an accident. Maria looked at Robert, then at the dark outline of the truck idling across the street. The same spot Chuck Benson's Ford had been earlier. She whispered, "He did this." Robert didn't answer. He just stared at the flames, jaw clenched so hard his teeth hurt. The diner that had once been a dream was now a heap of glowing ash. When the fire chief finally gave the all-clear, Robert and Jamal stood on the curb, barefoot, tired, broken. A news van rolled up. A reporter jumped out. "Sir, are you the owner? Do you know how this started?" Robert looked straight into the camera. Voice low, trembling but strong. "I built this diner for everyone, every race, every face. But tonight, someone decided we didn't belong." He turned and walked away, hand on Jamal's shoulder. Didn't say another word. Behind him, the flames died. But the hate that started them was still burning. The next morning, police arrived, not to arrest the arsonist, but to question Robert himself. Morning came heavy, like grief had settled over the whole town. Ash still floated in the air, gray and silent. The diner stood like a skeleton, walls blackened, roof half gone. Robert Carter sat on the curb, head in his hands. He hadn't slept. Jamal sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket Maria had brought from her car. Then, the sound of tires on gravel. 2 police cruisers rolled up. Lights off, engines rumbling low. Robert looked up, blinking in disbelief. Officer Green stepped out first. "Robert," he said flatly, "we need to talk." Robert frowned. "About what?" Green shifted. "Got a report that someone saw you leaving the diner late last night." "Before the fire started." Robert's jaw dropped. "What? It's my place!" "Of course I was there." Green didn't flinch. "Still gotta ask questions. You know how it works." "No," Robert snapped, standing. "I don't. Because when that man slapped my son, nobody asked him anything." "But now that my place burns down, I'm the suspect?" The second officer, younger, looked uncomfortable. "Sir, we just need to get your statement." Robert stared at them, then nodded slowly. "You want a statement? Fine." He pointed at the burned shell of his diner. "You're standing in it?" Jamal's small voice broke through the tension. "Dad, are they saying you did this?" Robert knelt beside him, voice soft. "They're confused, son." That's all. But his eyes said something else, Something tired, something old. Maria stepped forward, angry. "This is crazy! I saw him go home." "Chuck Benson was the one hanging around after closing." Green turned toward her. "You saw Chuck?" "Yes. He was drunk and yelling." "I told you that last night!" Green's expression hardened. "Then why didn't you file a report?" Maria's voice rose. "Because I called you. You said you'd handle it." The air went still. Even the younger officer looked at his partner uneasy. Robert folded his arms. "So, Officer Green, you handled it? Is that what this is?" Green didn't answer. He just scribbled something in his notebook. "Look, we'll check security footage from the gas station next door," Green said finally. "Until then, don't leave town." Robert's laugh was bitter. "Don't leave town? Where would I go? My business is ash." The officers turned to leave. As they walked away, Maria whispered to Robert, "They're protecting him." "You know they are," Robert nodded. "I know." He stood there watching them drive off, his diner still smoking behind him. And for the first time in a long time, he felt something worse than anger, helplessness. That night, he sat by Jamal's bed. The boy couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw fire. "Dad?" Jamal whispered. "Yes, son?" "What if they don't believe you?" Robert took a long breath. "Then we show them the truth. No matter how hard it is." He kissed his son's forehead. But when he stepped out of the room, his phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. "Should have stayed quiet, boss man. Some fires don't burn out easy." Robert stared at it. His hand shook. He looked out the window. The same street. The same shadows. Someone was still watching. The next morning, Robert finds something nailed to the burned diner's door. A message written in red paint. "Ownership has limits." The sun rose weak and gray over Montgomery. The street was quiet, except for the buzz of flies and the low crackle of burned wood still cooling. Robert parked across from what used to be Carter's diner. The smell of smoke still clung to everything. The air, his clothes, his skin, but something new caught his eye. Right in the center of the diner's front door, nailed to the charred wood, was a board. Big, ugly, fresh red paint. "Ownership has limits." Each letter dripped. Like it wasn't just paint. Like it meant something more. Robert froze. His stomach twisted. Someone had come back. He stepped closer, eyes scanning every inch. Footprints in the ash. Tire tracks along the curb. Whoever did this, did it recently. Maria's voice broke the silence behind him. "Oh my God." She stood there, coffee in hand, trembling. "They're not even hiding anymore." Robert didn't answer. He just pulled the sign down, hands shaking. Underneath, the door had been scratched, another word carved roughly into the wood. "Stay in your place." He felt the anger rise like fire all over again. Not fear, not sadness. Just that deep, bitter rage that came from knowing some people would rather see you burn than see you stand tall. Maria said quietly, "We have to tell someone." "The news, the police." Robert turned, eyes hard. "The same police who questioned me yesterday?" "No, they already chose their side." She hesitated. "Then what will you do?" He looked around the ashes, at the diner sign lying half-buried in soot. His father's name engraved in brass beneath it, Carter's Family Grill. And for a long moment, he said nothing. Then, softly, "I'm going to rebuild." "But this time?" "They'll have to see me rise." Maria nodded, wiping her tears. "You're not alone, Robert. The whole town saw that fire. People are talking." He frowned. "Talking?" She nodded again. "Yeah. I heard folks at the gas station saying Chuck's been bragging. Said something about teaching you a lesson." Robert's eyes darkened. "So he's proud of it." "Too proud," Maria whispered. "Someone's got to stop him." Robert looked toward the diner one last time, then at the town around him. At the same faces that smiled when he served them, now watching from across the street, pretending not to. He raised his voice. "Let them look," he said. "Let them whisper." "Because I'm not going anywhere." Then he tore the sign in half, dropped it in the ash, and walked away. That afternoon, Jamal came home from school quieter than usual. He didn't even touch his backpack, just stared out the window. "Dad," he said finally, "some kids at school." They said maybe we should leave town, that this place doesn't want us here. Robert crouched down beside him. Do you believe that? Jamal hesitated. I don't know. It feels like it. Robert put a hand on his shoulder. Son, the day you run from hate, it wins. And I didn't raise you to run. Jamal nodded slowly. Then we fight? Robert smiled faintly. We fight by standing tall. We rebuild. We show them what strength really looks like. But later that night, as the house went quiet and Jamal drifted to sleep, Robert sat in the dark, phone in hand, scrolling through the local news site. No story about the fire. No coverage, just silence, and then a new notification. A video uploaded to social media. Grainy footage of the diner burning. Laughter in the background. A voice, unmistakably Chuck's, and saying, "Should have stayed out of our town." Robert's blood ran cold. He hit play again, and this time, he noticed something in the reflection of the flames. A face, watching from across the street. Not Chuck, someone else, someone who'd filmed it all. Robert zooms in on the reflection and realizes the person filming was wearing a sheriff's badge. Robert stared at the screen, frozen. His thumb trembled as he paused the video, frame by frame, until the reflection came into focus. The flames danced off the diner's window. And there, standing across the street, faint but clear, a silver sheriff's badge glinting in the firelight. Robert's chest tightened. His heart thudded in slow, heavy beats. No, it couldn't be. He hit rewind. Play again. There it was. A figure holding up a phone, laughing softly in the background. Not in uniform, but wearing the same badge that only one man carried in this town. Officer Green, the same man who handled Chuck. The same man who told Robert to drop it. Robert's hands clenched into fists. The man meant to protect his family had stood there and watched it burn. Dad? Jamal's voice came from the doorway. He rubbed his eyes. Why are you up? Robert quickly turned the phone screen face down. Just checking something, son. Go back to bed, Jamal frowned. You're mad again, Robert forced a small smile. Not mad, just thinking. But the truth was, he was boiling inside. Not the kind of anger that explodes, the kind that plans. When Jamal went back to his room, Robert reopened the video. Downloaded it, saved it twice. Then called Maria. She answered, groggy. Robert? It's 2 a.m. I found something, he said. And if I'm right, it changes everything. Maria sat up. What do you mean? Green was there, Robert said quietly. At the fire, watching filming, Maria went silent. Then whispered, You're sure? I saw the badge. Oh my God. She breathed. Robert, if that's true, we can't go to the police, he interrupted. They'll bury it. Then who? She asked. Robert thought for a long moment. Then said, the news. We go to the press. But we need proof. Solid proof. He stared at the burned diner out the window, the glow of street lights hitting the blackened walls. Tomorrow I'm going to find that camera angle. Someone else had to see what happened, Maria whispered. Be careful, Robert. If Green's involved, they won't let you walk away easy. I know, he said quietly. But I'm done walking away. The next morning, Robert drove to the gas station next door to the diner. The owner, Mr. Patel, greeted him with a nervous smile. Robert, my friend, I'm so sorry about your diner. Thanks, Robert said. Listen, your cameras still work, right? Mr. Patel hesitated. They do, but the police came by yesterday. Took the footage. Robert's stomach dropped. Took it? Yes. Officer Green said it was part of the investigation. Of course he did. Robert nodded slowly, jaw tightening. Did he take all of it? Patel looked around, lowered his voice. Not all. I have cloud backups. Different angle from the corner camera. You want to see? Robert's pulse quickened. Yes, please. Patel led him inside. Clicked through old footage until, there, the diner. Nighttime. And clear as day, Chuck Benson's truck parked behind it. Robert leaned closer. Chuck got out. Another man joined him, Green in plain clothes. Robert's breath caught. They walked to the back of the diner. Then, the flash. Moments later, smoke. Fire. Robert whispered, Got you. Patel stared at the screen. "You're going to the news, aren't you?" Robert nodded slowly. "Yeah. And I'm not stopping until the whole country sees this." But as he stepped out of the gas station, his phone buzzed again. Another text from the same blocked number. "You should have stayed quiet." "You're not the only one with something to lose." Robert froze. He looked across the street and saw a dark car parked in front of his house. Inside, a figure sat motionless, watching. Robert turns to run inside, but then realizes Jamal's bedroom light is on, and the shadow in the car is already stepping out. The night felt colder than usual. Robert's breath hung in the air as he stared at the dark sedan parked outside his house. The engine wasn't running, but the headlights flickered once, like a warning. Jamal's bedroom light still glowed upstairs. Robert's stomach twisted. He moved toward the house, each step slow, deliberate, his pulse pounding in his ears. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, broad-shouldered, face hidden under a cap. "Robert, stop dead. Can I help you?" he called out. His voice cracked just slightly, enough to betray the fear bubbling under his calm. The man didn't answer. He just walked closer. The porch light hit his face, and Robert's breath caught. It wasn't Green. It wasn't Chuck. It was someone else. "Mr. Robert Davis?" the man said finally. His voice was deep, professional, too calm. "Who's asking?" Robert said, keeping his distance. The man reached into his jacket, slowly, and pulled out a card. "Name's Victor Morales. Private investigator." Robert frowned, cautious. "For who?" Morales handed him the card. "I'm working with the Herald, the national paper. Your friend Maria reached out, said you've got a story that needs to be heard." Robert's shoulders eased, just slightly. "She didn't tell me you were coming. She wanted to make sure you were safe first," Morales said. "You've made some powerful enemies, Mr. Davis." Robert looked around, uneasy. "You don't have to tell me that." Morales leaned in closer. "I've seen the footage. What you found, it's not just arson. It's corruption. Green's tied to multiple harassment reports. 2 disappearances, but no one's been able to prove anything. Until now." Robert blinked. "Disappearances?" Morales nodded grimly. "A waitress from your diner 2 years ago, and a mechanic who filed a complaint against Chuck Benson. Both vanished within weeks." Robert's hands trembled. "You think Green?" "I don't think," Morales said. "I know. But we need that footage secure, off the grid. They'll come for it." Robert thought of Jamal inside, of the texts, of the fire. His voice hardened. "Then we don't wait. We go public." Morales shook his head. "Too dangerous." "We go smart." He handed Robert a small flash drive. "Back up the footage here. I'll get it to the newsroom myself." Robert hesitated. "And what if something happens to me before that?" Morales looked him in the eye. "Then I'll make sure the world still sees it." Inside, Jamal peered through his bedroom window. He saw the 2 men talking, the flash of something silver in the stranger's hand. His mind raced. Was Dad in trouble again? He grabbed his phone and texted his friend Malik. "Dad's talking to some guy outside. Think it's about the fire. Don't tell anyone." Then he watched as the man in the hat got back in the car and drove away. His father stood alone in the driveway, clutching a flash drive like it was the last piece of hope left in the world. Later that night, Robert sat on the couch, staring at the drive in his hand. Jamal crept downstairs. "Dad?" Robert looked up. "Hey, buddy." "Couldn't sleep?" Jamal shook his head. "Was that man a cop?" "No," Robert said quietly. "He's someone trying to help." "Help with what?" Robert smiled faintly. "With making things right." Jamal hesitated. "Will the diner come back?" Robert's throat tightened. "Maybe not the same one, but we'll rebuild, stronger." The boy nodded slowly, then whispered, "You're not scared, are you?" Robert looked at the burned photo of his diner on the table. "I used to be," he said softly. "Not anymore." He plugged the flash drive into his laptop, but the screen flickered, then went black. Lines of code flashed for half a second before the laptop powered down completely, and a single message appeared in red text across the screen. "Too late." Robert's heart stopped. He yanked the flash drive out. Smoke curled from the USB port. The drive was fried. He whispered, They got to it. Outside, a car engine started. Headlights swept across the window, slow, deliberate, and a voice echoed faintly from the street. "I told you to stay quiet." "Robert." Robert lunges for the phone to call Maria. But before he can dial, a brick shatters his living room window with a note tied to it. The crash echoed through the house. Glass sprayed across the living room floor. Jamal screamed from upstairs, "Dad!" Robert's instincts kicked in. He dove for cover, heart pounding, scanning the window. No movement outside, just the faint glow of a car disappearing down the street. He reached for the brick lying among the shattered glass. A piece of paper was tied around it, scorched at the edges. He untied it with shaking fingers. The message was short. "Last warning. Leave it buried, or next time it won't be your diner." Robert's breath came fast and shallow. He crumpled the note in his hand. That was it. "Enough hiding! Jamal, get downstairs!" he shouted. The boy ran down in his pajamas, eyes wide. "Dad, what's happening?" Robert crouched and grabbed his shoulders. "Listen to me, son. No matter what happens, you stay close to me, all right?" Jamal nodded, trembling. "Are they coming back?" Robert glanced at the broken window. "Not if I get to them first." He picked up his phone and dialed Maria. She answered instantly. "Robert, I saw the news. There was a fire at your place." "They tried to scare me," he said, voice tight. "But they made one mistake." "What mistake?" "They forgot I've got backup copies," Maria gasped. You backed it up?" "Before Morales came," Robert said. "One copy to a cloud, one to an old hard drive." "I knew something like this might happen," Maria exhaled, relief mixed with fear. "Then we can go to the Herald now. I'll set up a meeting." "But Robert, what?" "They'll come harder once they realize you still have it." Robert looked at his son, who was silently clutching his arm. "I'm counting on it," he said. "Let them come." "I'm done being quiet." The next morning, the story broke online. Local officer and businessman under investigation for arson, racist assault, and corruption cover-up. The headline hit like wildfire. Robert's face was everywhere. Photos of him holding Jamal's hand outside the burned diner. People shared, commented, demanded justice. By noon, TV vans lined the street. Maria stood beside him, holding a microphone, eyes fierce with determination. "We're live in Jackson County, where restaurant owner Robert Davis has exposed what appears to be a major corruption ring involving local law enforcement and businessman Chuck Benson." Robert took a deep breath and faced the camera. "My name is Robert Davis. I built my diner for everyone, every color, every background. But when my son was slapped and humiliated for being who he is, I saw the truth of what still lives in this town. They tried to silence me, burn me out. But we're still standing." His voice wavered, but his stare was steel. "And we're not done talking." The crowd behind him erupted in applause. Maria turned to the camera. "The sheriff's office has not yet issued a statement. But tonight, the nation is watching." That night, Robert sat with Jamal on the porch, the smell of smoke still lingering in the air. Jamal leaned against him. "Dad? Yeah, buddy? Are we safe now?" Robert stared out at the flashing police lights in the distance. "Not yet," he said softly. "But safer than we were yesterday?" Jamal was quiet for a while. Then, in a small voice, "Does being black always mean fighting like this?" Robert swallowed hard. He looked down at his son, the reflection of porch light in those bright young eyes. "Sometimes," he said. "But it also means we rise, no matter how many times they try to knock us down." Jamal nodded slowly. "Then I'm gonna rise too." Robert smiled. "Yeah," he said quietly. "You already are." As the camera fades, a voiceover closes. Racism doesn't burn away with a building. It burns inside systems that protect the wrong people, until someone stands up and says, "Enough." Robert Davis did that. For his son. For his dignity. For justice. What would you have done if this was your family? Would you have stayed silent or spoken truth to power? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more true stories about courage, justice, and overcoming discrimination. 3 days later, the diner's ashes were still warm when Robert got the call. It was Maria. Her voice trembled. "Robert, Green's been suspended. Internal Affairs opened a full investigation." Robert froze mid-step. You're serious? Yes, but that's not all, she said. Chuck Benson's been arrested. They found the same accelerant from the diner fire in his garage. For a second, Robert couldn't breathe. All the anger, fear, and exhaustion he'd been carrying broke like a wave. They finally did it, he whispered. Maria hesitated. Robert, there's more. Green wants to talk to you, personally. Robert's jaw tightened. What does he want? He said he's ready to confess, but only to you. The meeting was set for the next morning at the county station, a small gray building that smelled of bleach and regret. Robert walked in alone. 2 officers escorted him down a quiet hallway toward a small interview room. Inside sat Officer Green, no badge, no gun, just a hollow man in a wrinkled shirt. His eyes were tired. His voice was low. You wanted to see me, Robert said, standing tall. Green looked up. You got what you wanted, huh? Whole town hates me now. Robert's expression didn't change. You did that yourself. Green gave a bitter laugh. You think this started with your diner? Man, this town's been built on rot since before either of us was born. Robert leaned forward. Then why'd you help keep it that way? Green's hands trembled. He rubbed his face. Because I thought it kept me safe. I thought siding with men like Chuck meant power. But it's poison, Robert. Poison I drank for too long. Robert stared at him, jaw tight. You watched my place burn. I did. You filmed it? I did. Why? Green looked up, eyes glassy. Because I wanted to remember the moment I sold my soul. And maybe someday I'd use it to make things right. Robert's voice dropped to a whisper. You almost killed my boy. Green flinched. I know. Silence filled the room. Then Green slid something across the table, a USB drive. I kept my copy, he said. Everything. Not just the diner. Every payoff, every fake report, every cover-up. You'll know the truth now. Robert stared at it, unsure whether to take it. You really think this makes you right? No, Green said softly. But maybe it keeps me from dying wrong. Later, outside the station, Maria was waiting. She saw Robert holding the flash drive. Is that everything? He said. The whole story. They stood in silence for a long moment. Then Maria smiled faintly. You know what this means, right? Robert looked at her. Yeah, it means it's not over yet. A month later, Robert reopened the diner, rebuilt from the ground up. Same spot, same sign. But this time, the first thing people saw when they walked in wasn't a menu. It was a framed photo of Robert and Jamal, standing in front of the ashes, and beneath it, a plaque that read, Justice doesn't start in courtrooms. It starts when you stop being afraid. That night, Jamal helped his father close up. The boy smiled, flipping the open sign to closed. Dad? Yeah? You ever miss the old diner? Robert smiled softly. Sometimes. But I like this one better, Jamal grinned. Because it's new? Robert looked around. At the lights, the laughter, the mixed crowd sharing tables without fear. No, he said quietly. Because it finally feels right. Sometimes justice isn't about revenge. It's about rebuilding. It's about showing the world that hate can't burn down what's built on love, courage, and truth. Robert Davis didn't just win a case, he reminded a town what humanity looks like. If you've ever faced discrimination or witnessed injustice, speak up. Your voice matters more than their silence. Tell us in the comments. What would you have done in Robert's place? And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-life stories that shine light on truth, courage, and resilience.